We were just, we were talking before about the kind of things we've seen happen in history. History not being taught in school. Neither is the basis of the balance of nature. And I love the fact, I know he's on a book tour and he's going to be on The Outsiders on Sunday morning. So big shout out to the Outsider team. But Michael Schillenberger has made quite a deal of the fact that for 30 years he's been interested in the environment and climate and all this sort of stuff. And for 20 years he's been campaigning about climate change. He's now written a book saying apocalypse. Never. The whole thing was BS and just ignore it. Let's all move on. The climate's changing, but the world's not coming to an end. So that's a hallelujah moment for me, Caroline. I'm quite happy to acknowledge that we might have been a bit right on that.
And I think, we do need to be concerned about the environment. Okay, climate change may not be the apocalypse that we all think it is, but there are plenty of other environmental issues, plenty of pollution issues and dumping of waste issues and whatever. And I've always taken the view that we should really focus on those things which are immediate and now and that do affect our daily lives, as we live them, not how we're going to live them in 20 or 30 years' time, potentially based on models that no one really knows what the input figures are. As far as climate change, the subject itself's gone, I've always been a little bit reticent to delve into the science because I haven't hugely understood it. But even if you accept the science, the economics just doesn't fit. There's no way that you can make all of those things happen and then we all live in this, this happy utopia and there's like unicorns and butterflies and whatever. It just doesn't happen that way. And going back to what we were discussing before the break about the comments that Matt Canavan made, we can't let our economy and our national security be the sacrificial lambs to what's fashionable in environment policy at the moment. And no. I have no opposition to having different types of energy in different places, no opposition whatsoever. But you always need to have that fundamental base load that when you flick the switch, it's going to turn on. And that there is correct. That reliability and economic viability you just don't have with the current renewable technology at the moment.
No, you can throw one of those made-in-China solar panels on the roof of your house and power your oven to your heart's content, as far as I'm concerned, but there still has to be baseload power there. And coal for the east coast of Australia is the absolute answer. Now, the other thing that's, of course, also occurred in recent days, unreally reported, Gideon, to a great extent, is the fact that the World Health Organisation seems to have backtracked on that story from back about 6 months ago, which suggested that China had come forward, cap in hand, and said, there's this coronavirus thing and it's new and all this sort of stuff. The World Health Organisation were praising China. That Tedros bloke who seems to have been appointed by China to head that thing, they're now backtracking and saying, they didn't really come forward and they weren't all that honest. Who's surprised?
Not at all, Gary, not at all. Look, here's another parallel, sadly, with the interwar period, in that this coronavirus epidemic has shown the United Nations to be like the League of Nations was, which is deeply flawed and basically impotent. What it's writ large, or what it's revealed, is the fact that the rules-based order has been systematically undermined by people who not only don't respect it, but are willing to manipulate it for their own purposes. Look at the fact that something like 80 or to 90% of United Nations General Assembly resolutions have been about Israel, not about brutal dictatorships and totalitarian regimes. When you look at the fact that the WTO has not been able to prevent China's systematic manipulation of trade rules, in fact, it's facilitated it. Look at the fact that the Human Rights Committee contains nations such as Sudan, Somalia, and wait for it, Venezuela. And look at the fact that the WTO did not denied evidence of human-to-human transmission, dragged its feet into declaring a pandemic to begin with, praised China for its handling of the crisis, and at every turn failed to deal with this pandemic in the way that it was set up to do. I think the rules-based order and multilateral institutions should be and could be wonderful things that uphold decency and the rule of law and order and prosperity for all. But sadly, they are no longer fit for purpose, and we have to absolutely reevaluate them.